SOC or Security Operations Center is often regarded as the heart of any business's cybersecurity strategy. Let me tell you why. The APT-41 targeted several sectors in India, including telecom, transportation, and government organizations, to steal sensitive information. Then there's the Red Echo attack, which focused on India's power plants, electricity distribution centers, and even seaports. And let's not forget the Lazarus Group attack on South Korean financial institutions, which included banks and cryptocurrency exchanges. These incidents highlight just how fragile and sensitive our data is. But why didn't any of these incidents cause widespread damage? Or in other words, why didn't you hear about any of these? Because they were detected and contained in the early stages itself by a group of highly skilled SOC analysts, which prevented significant damage and a widespread exposure. SOC analysts, apart from being the frontline defense during any cybersecurity attack, is also one of the highest in-demand and sought-after careers in India, according to an article by the Times of India. This article further states that the Indian cybersecurity market will cross over 2 trillion by 2025, resulting in the creation of over 1 million job opportunities, which is clearly reflected in both the 19,000 plus job openings available currently and in having an average salary of 5 lakhs per annum for an SOC analyst in India. Now that you have a very clear understanding of the need and importance of an SOC analyst, let's proceed with what you came here for. This video is divided into 4 parts based on the 4 important concepts. Each part contains 5 questions, which add up to a total of 20 questions in the whole video. The 4 important concepts covered are as follows: basic networking and security concepts, tools and monitoring in SOC, incident response and threat management, and finally, advanced cybersecurity concepts to wrap up this session. But before we begin, if you want more such videos, then make sure to give this video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button to never miss out on any updates from us. So, without any further ado, let's start with the first question, which is very commonly asked in an SOC analyst interview. What is the purpose of a Security Operations Center or SOC? At this point, you must have a vague idea about what an SOC does, but let's look at the proper definition. In very simple terms, an SOC is like a control room where a team of experts constantly watch over an organization's digital systems to prevent any kind of cyber attacks and take action to stop them before they can cause any damage. Or in technical terms, an SOC is responsible for monitoring and defending an organization's IT infrastructure from cyber threats by focusing on real-time detection, analysis, and response to the security incidents. That settles it. Moving on to our next question. That is our second question, which is, explain the TCP three-way handshake. Now, what is a TCP three-way handshake? Say you have the client which sends a message to the server, or maybe say your laptop which is connected to the server. So your laptop sends a message to the server saying that, hey, I want to connect with you. And this message is sequenced. The sequence of this message is 100. And this is called as the sync message, which you're just trying to sync in with the server. So you're sending the first message, hey, I want to connect with you. And then the server returns back a message, which would be the sync acknowledgement message that, sure, I'm ready, let's connect. And this particular message has a sequence, which is the sequence 100. And this is also called as the acknowledgement, which is acknowledgement 101. Next, your laptop or the client responds to the acknowledgement saying, great, we're connected. And this again has a sequence, say sequence 101, and there's an acknowledgement as well, acknowledgement 301. Now you can see that there was a three-way connection happening. First, your laptop talked to the server responded back with an acknowledgement, then you acknowledged that acknowledgement and sent another acknowledgement. So there is a three-way communication happening between your computer and the server. So that is called as a three-way handshake. Now, why is this important? Now, this is an important concept when it comes to networking and SOC analyst in general, because this ensures that whatever packets you're sending from your laptop to the server, that the communication is reliable between both the parties involved. So, if you look at the table over here, you can see the sequence numbers with the proper communication table. This is how the routing table is prepared for all the servers or all the devices involved in the communication. First, we had the client which sent the sync package with the sequence number 100, which was, hey, I want to connect. There was no acknowledgement. Second, the server responded to this first with sync acknowledgement with the sequence number 300 that, yes, I'm ready to connect, and it was an acknowledgement. Next, your client responded to that acknowledgement with the 101, and the acknowledgement number was 301. Or in technical terms, TCP establishes a reliable connection between a client and a server before data transmission in the TCP/IP protocol, which ensures that both parties are synchronized and are ready to exchange data. Moving on to the next question. What is the CIA Triad and why is it essential in cybersecurity? Now, the CIA Triad is a fundamental model in cybersecurity that outlines 3 core principles essential for securing information systems and data. Now, it's basically a set of 3 rules which are like the fundamental or the pillars in making sure that cybersecurity is established. What are these 3 principles? It's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. What does this mean? Confidentiality is protecting sensitive data from unauthorized access or disclosures, such as locking your files. Such as when a client is sending their sensitive files to your company, such as WhatsApp, storing your private chats, you want to make sure that nobody else is accessing those chats. Nobody who's unauthorized be accessing those sensitive files. So that is why you're protecting those sensitive files. You're encrypting those files, and that is confidentiality, making sure that any unauthorized person is not accessing those files. Next, you have integrity. Integrity is protecting data from unauthorized modification, such as a hacker breaching into your data and changing the pre-existing data. Say you send a text to your friend and somebody, maybe a hacker, they modify that text and send something else to your friend. So that is protecting the integrity so that this situation does not happen. Next, you have availability. Availability is preventing disruptions to services or access to data, such as the DDoS attacks, preventing a DDoS attacks where the authorized people are not able to access their data. So this kind of situation should not be happening. Like you have your messages stored you're storing your clients' messages in a place, and now you only are not able to access that data. That should not happen. That kind of scenario should not be happen. That is called as availability. So now, why do we need the CIA Triad? It might be obvious enough, but still, maintaining these principles builds trust with users, clients, and stakeholders by ensuring their data is handled responsibly, which is very important when it comes to business. Moving on to our next question. Define and explain the difference between IDS and IPS. IDS and IPS are both very important terms when it comes to cybersecurity. It's a way to protect your service. It are protocols which protect your service, but they do have a very different way of working. Let's see how. Now, say there's a data breach. Say there's a SQL injection happening. SQL injection is when your SQL data, somebody is trying to, like a hacker is trying to modify your SQL databases, that particular query. So there's a hacker who's trying to put a bug into your SQL servers and they're trying to do the SQL injection. Now, in case of IDS, what happens is that it alerts, like you have set up the IDS protocol, so it alerts you, it sends you an alert that possible SQL injection detected at IP 192.168.1.5. That is how IDS works. It just sends you an alert that there's a possible breach, there's a possible SQL injection happening in this particular IP. Now, when it comes to IPS, it not only alerts the user, but it also takes the necessary action, such as blocking that IP address in this particular case. In case of IDS, you can see it was an alert. But in case of IPS, you can see it's a direct blocked. That possible SQL injection was there from this IP at this particular time, so I blocked it. That is IPS, not only alerting, but also blocking, also taking the necessary step. So, in technical terms, IDS or intrusion detection system detects the SQL injection but doesn't block it. So the security team manually have to block the attacker. It's like, oh, I can see a data breach, you do something about it. That's IDS. And when it comes to IPS or intrusion prevention system, it detects and blocks the SQL injection, hence the system automatically is blocking the attacker. You don't have to do anything, it's all automatic when it comes to IPS. Moving on to our next question. What is port scanning and how do attackers use it? Say there's a web server. If you must have worked in full stack, or if you must have launched your own web applications, you must know about these port numbers, right? So say there's a web server running and there are multiple ports which is connected to it. There's port 22, there's port 80, and there is port 3306. Now, this is an interesting concept. The hacker can actually send multiple packets to these ports to figure out or to find out the current status of these ports, such as if these ports are opened or if these ports are closed. Now, what happens in port scanning is the hacker sends multiple packets to these ports on a particular web server and gets back these packets, like we saw in TCP handshake, right? A packet is going and then it comes back. So that's happening here. And then these packets give information about the current status of these ports. Now you can see port 22, which is the SSH port, it is open. Port 80, it is closed, so it's fine. 3306 is also open, that is your MySQL, your database server is open. So you can see that both of these 22 and 3306 ports are open. Now what the hacker can do with this? The hacker can try brute force approach. They can try guessing the passwords of whatever your database is. They can, you have seen a SQL service, right? So they can just try to guess the password of it. And if they unfortunately succeed, they can steal all the data that you've stored in your database. So that's what port scanning is, and that's how it works. Or in technical terms, port scanning is a technique used to identify open or closed ports on a network device. Essentially, it helps determine which ports are active and what services are running on them. Moving on to our next question. What are SIEM tools? Explain their role in security monitoring. SIEM, or Security Information and Event Management tools, aggregate and analyze logs from various sources to identify potential security incidents and facilitate incident responses. What does this mean? Say there are a lot of tools. You have set up, you have your own company now. You're setting up you're preventing any data breaches from happening. So you have set up a lot of things. You have servers, you have firewalls, you have IDS, IPS, and you have endpoints. Everything is safe and secure. Now, what SIEM tools is doing is, all of these, the servers, firewalls, IDS, IPS, and endpoints, they have certain logs that at this time we did this, at this time we did this, right? So these are documented in form of logs. Now, all of these logs are transmitted or are sent to a central repository which keeps track of all of these devices. A central system which is connected to all of these. Say there are multiple primary branches which are connected to the main system. That is what SIEM tools are. Now, there are various SIEM tools available in the market, like Sumo Logic, Elastic Security, Splunk, Logarithm, ArcSci, IBM QRadar, SolarWinds, SEM. Splunk is one of the most famous one when it comes to cybersecurity. You can even search for this. This one, Splunk technology, it simplifies the task of collecting and managing massive volumes of machine-generated data and searching for information within it. So basically, Splunk and all of these softwares that you're looking at, they all collect data from different softwares that you have set up, and they analyze that data. But why would we need to do this? Why would we need to collect that machine-generated data and then analyze them? That brings us to our next question, which is, what is log correlation and why is it critical for identifying threats? This collecting and analyzing data will help you identify potential threats. But how? Now, what is log correlation? Log correlation is the process of analyzing and linking log entries from multiple sources like a firewall, server, application, endpoints to uncover patterns or relationships that indicate a potential security threat. Why would we need this? Say there's a firewall, there's a port scanning happening. We just looked at what port scanning is. So your firewall detects it, right? That there are multiple packets coming from a single IP address. So there's a data breach, there's a possible data breach happening. So your firewall alerts that there's a port scanning happening. And at the same time, your server also sends another message that there's an unauthorized access, an unauthorized IP address is trying to access your servers. Now, how do you know as a user that this data breach came from here? That first the attacker tried the brute force attack through the port scanning and then they reached your server. How do you know that? For that, you need log correlation, which takes data from both this firewall and application server and sends it to softwares like your Splunk, and it analyzes the data and it figures out. Or in technical terms, events occurring across different systems can be pieced together to identify a broader attack pattern or the path that the attacker took to attack your system. You need to be able to understand the path so that you can prevent any more future attacks. So that's exactly why you need log correlation, or you need SIEM tools. So log correlation provides the context needed to uncover sophisticated attacks, reduce false positives, and enable timely responses. Now, what do you mean by false positives? False positives is sometimes you must have seen, if you must use Google, right? So if you try to log into your Google ID from some other IP address which is unrecognized by the Google systems, you immediately get a mail on your email ID that some IP address from this particular location is trying to access your email ID. Is that you? If it's not you, send us a message. So that is a false positive. That is Google checking for a false positive. Sometimes it's possible that a hacker is doing this and you are not aware that somebody accessed your email, you have no idea. Then that's a hacker. So that's an actual cyber attack going to happen. But if it's you yourself who is accessing from the other IP, then there's no need to cause a huge alarm about it. So it's just you just had an emergency situation and you had to immediately log in. So you don't need to create a huge fuss about it, right? So that's a false positive, where there's no need, but still a trigger goes off. So to prevent that, you need log correlation. Moving on to our next question. How do you fine-tune a SIEM system to minimize false positives? False positives are very important. Minimizing false positives is very crucial. So you can use your SIEM tools to minimize that. Let's look at how you do that. So fine-tuning an SIEM tool involves optimizing its configuration, rules and processes to ensure that alerts are accurate, actionable and aligned with the organization's security needs. Let's understand this better with the help of an example. So, say a failed login attempt is happening, which is generating a lot of false positives. Now, how to prevent this? How to prevent the false positives from happening? You can have a baseline analysis, as in, determine the typical number of failed logins per user per hour. Next, you can have a rule refinement, which will set a threshold for, say, five failed logins within 10 minutes from the same IP. Next, there is context-aware filtering, which will exclude alerts for known trusted sources, such as internal subnets or whitelisted IP addresses, which you already know that they are safe, so no need to get alerted because of them. Then there is review and update, which is after tuning periodically review whether the rule misses any real incidents or continues to generate false positives. Moving on to our next question. Name some commonly used tools in network security and their purposes. There are a lot of common tools that are used in network security, such as your firewalls, IDS, IPS, SIEM, MFA tools, and honeypots. We already talked about firewalls, IDS, IPS, SIEM. MFA is multi-factor authentication, and honeypots is also an interesting concept. So let's look at them one by one. Firewall basically acts as a barrier between trusted internal networks and untrusted external networks. IDS, IPS again. IDS detects, IPS prevents unauthorized or malicious activity on the network. SIEM tools again collect data, or they aggregate and analyze log data from multiple sources to detect threats. MFA tools or multi-factor authentication tools add an extra layer of authentication to prevent unauthorized access. Honeypots acts as a decoy to attract attackers and study their methods. Now, out of all of this, I believe honeypot is a newer concept. Now, what honeypot does is, in a website, if a human is, scrolling through the website, if you put a particular element, say a div tag, if you render it as invisible, then for the human eyes, you will not be able to see that div tag. But if a machine or a robot is scrolling through that same website, the robot will be able to identify that particular element. Not to a human eye, but the robot or the particular bug which is in the website, it can sense the div tag. So it will detect and it will interact with the div tag. And that is how the systems will know that, okay, how is the human interacting? A human interaction with that particular div tag is not possible. So it's definitely a bug. So there's definitely a cyber attack going to happen, and they can prevent it from happening. That is setting up honeypots. Moving on to the next question. What do you understand by threat hunting? Now, unlike our traditional cybersecurity methods where you're like, after the cybersecurity attack happens, then you're trying to prevent it. What threat hunting does is, like, as the name suggests, you're hunting for threats. That is, your system automatically assumes that there is a threat inside the system already and then tries to prevent it from causing any further damage. Or your systems looks out constantly, assuming that there's a threat. They look out constantly, they check all your servers and all your network security devices, they monitor it continuously to prevent any further damage. Or in technical terms, threat hunting is the proactive process of searching for cyber threats that may be lurking undetected within an organization's network or system. Now, the benefits of threat hunting are that it can give enhanced detection, faster response time, improved security posture, and operational insights. Because even before the attack is happening, you're already, even if, sometimes the attacker just plants the bug there and it might start affecting maybe on a much later stage. So if you're able to detect that bug at a very early stage itself, then you can eradicate it at the earliest stage and prevent any further damage. So that are basically the benefits of threat hunting. Moving on to the next question. What steps would you take to respond to a DDoS attack? DDoS, or denial of service attack, is a very severe and a very common attack, unfortunately. what happens in this attack is the authorized personnel are not able to access their own data. They're prevented access. Or say you have your own mobile phone, right? So a hacker hacks your phone and you're not only able to access your own mobile phone, you're not able to open your Instagram account, you're not able to open your WhatsApp chats, you're not able to retrieve any of that because the hacker blocked you out. So that is a DDoS attack. Now, how to prevent it? So you can access the impact. Obviously, the first stage is access the impact, such as if your Instagram account got hacked, access the impact. Instagram account got hacked, anything else. Did WhatsApp get attacked? Did Snapchat get attacked? Check all of that. Then apply rate limiting. Rate limiting is interaction with the particular IP address. Sometimes when an attacker is attacking, they're attacking from a single IP address, right? So you can block it. So you can say that at a given time, say in 5 minutes, only 5 IP addresses are supposed to be interacting with this server. Then geo-blocking. If you know that a particular attack is coming from a particular location, you can block the entire region just to make sure that your device is safe or until the time your device comes back online. Next, there is reroute traffic. So whatever traffic is coming to your website, and say you have a website which has multiple locations and then you have CDN servers. So say if my server is in Mumbai and it got affected, then whoever my users are, the Mumbai users are, I'll reroute them to say another location. Say I'll reroute them to Bangalore's location, and I'll wait until my Mumbai's server has recovered to bring them back to my server. Then there is leverage CDN caching. That's again the same thing. Rerouting traffic, you need CDN caching. Moving on to the next question. Explain how malware analysis is conducted at a high level. Now, not for your basic viruses that you download on your PC, not for that one, but when a malware attack happens at a huge scale on, say, a large company, then they already have the malware in their systems, right? So they try to understand that malware. They try to understand the pattern of that malware. How does that understand? How do you understand a malware is this question. So malware analysis is the process of examining malicious software to understand its behavior, purpose, and potential impact. How? First step is preparation. So there's a malware which is like causing a lot of tantrums in your system. You capture it. You capture it inside a sandbox, inside a safe environment. Say a safe environment like any virtual systems, which is safer, which doesn't have a lot of your important files. So you keep it or you sandbox it inside a safer environment so that it cannot do any further damage. Next, you bring out your dissemblers, debuggers, and analyzers, and you start dissecting the malware. It's not as bad as it sounds. You use tools like Wireshark, which can monitor. You look at how it's damaging the files. You look at the APIs and the encrypted data and the encrypted part of the particular malware so that you can understand what all parts of the malware are hidden from plain sights, and you can dissect it further. And then you analyze the data, and then you analyze the metadata of the virus. From the metadata, you can analyze the file headers, metadata, and the hashes. We'll know more about hashes in the upcoming question. So that is the basic step, the first step, that you're analyzing it, trying to understand the basics of it, how it is working and everything. Next, you have the dynamic analysis. Dynamic analysis is where you execute the malware, but not in your system, in a virtual system with a safer environment, in a sandbox environment. You allow the virus to get executed so that you can watch in real time that whatever damage it's causing to your system. So once you start letting the malware to do its thing, you can see what kind of files are getting affected, what changes are being made in those files, how the data is being transferred, what is the network activity. You can monitor the network activity again with Wireshark. So that's dynamic analysis. From this dynamic analysis, you can track the behavior and then analyze network communication, like I said. Then there is advanced analysis. Advanced analysis is doing basically reverse engineering, where you trace back and go to the beginning of how it could have been developed so that you can recognize the same pattern if it comes again. Next, there is behavior correlation. Now that this is which malware family it belongs to. You check it with which malware family it belongs to. That is behavior correlation. Moving on to the next question. What is the difference between signature-based and behavior-based detection techniques? Now, signature-based detection technique, it relies on predefined patterns of known malwares to identify threats. And behavior-based focuses on identifying malicious activities by analyzing the behavior or pattern of a program. Let's see how this works. Now, when it comes to signature-based, say you're downloading a file, you got an email and there was a certain attachment, so you're downloading it, it's a PDF file. Now, you have an antivirus software installed in your system. Now, what your antivirus software does is, it passes the file, this particular file has a particular hash. I told you we'll discuss about hash, this is hash. The file has a hash, and the antivirus software takes that hash and it runs it through its entire database to check if this relates to any already existing malware's hash. If the already existing malware doesn't have anything like this particular hash in the system, then it gives it a green flag that okay, this is fine, this is not a malware. And then the antivirus software lets you download that particular PDF into your laptop. That is how signature-based works. Now, behavior-based is, say you have a company servers and there's an internal breach happening. There's the company employee who's trying to steal the data, who's trying to steal the company's confidential data. Now, the antivirus software here, your behavior-based tools like your Splunk and your SIEM tools in general, they will detect this unusual activity, that unusually there's a huge amount of data files transferring. This is not even happening during business hours, right? So the tool is able to track that during unusual business hours, a huge amount of data is being transferred, and it alerts this authorities, and that's how this internal company employee who is trying to breach the data is caught. So, signature-based is ideal for environments with well-established threats and minimal risk of novel attacks. But behavior-based is critical in high-security environments where zero-day exploits or APTs or advanced persistent threats are likely to happen. We'll look at what zero-day attacks are, which will again come further in the slides. Moving on to our next question. How do you approach a data exfiltration attempt? How do you detect a data exfiltration attempt? First is define the normal behavior. There are a lot of network security system tools that you have set up, right? You need to feed them a lot of data. You need to make them understand what the normal flow of the data should look like, so that if there is an abnormal flow, the systems are able to detect that. Similarly, we even have data flows, again inspecting data flows. Normal traffic is there, an abnormal traffic in network activity or anything, then again it should be able to detect it. Then there is real-time responses like your IPS systems. So when there's a malware, you immediately need to stop it. You immediately need to quarantine it inside a sandbox environment and immediately need to block it and take the immediate action to prevent further damage. Okay. Moving on to our next question. Explain the concept of red team versus blue team exercises in cybersecurity. So the concept of red team and blue team exercise is part of your cybersecurity strategy. Let's see how it works. Say you have an internal server which is connected to multiple employee systems. Now, what the red team does is, they try to breach into these systems. Say, for an example, just for this example, the particular red team people, they're sending a particular email to this one of the internal servers, and one of the employees, without knowing that it's a virus, clicks on that email and downloads that particular virus into their system, which can then move laterally and affect all the systems that are connected to the same network. Now, what the blue team does in this particular case is they use some kind of antivirus software such as CrowdStrike in this example, and they try to isolate or quarantine these viruses to prevent any further damage. And then they eradicate the viruses completely. After eradicating the virus, they also have to document that how the virus was able to breach into the systems and what kind of damages it caused and how it could have been prevented and how it was prevented after realizing that it attacked. So at this point, you must have a clear idea that red team are the attackers. So red team tests an organization's detection and response capabilities. And your blue team is basically the defenders, which protect the organization's assets by detecting, responding to, and mitigating attacks in real time. Moving on to the next question. What is cognitive cybersecurity and how is it implemented? Cognitive cybersecurity is basically when you're training cognitive features such as reasoning, problem solving, and decision making to identify, analyze, and respond to cyber threats more efficiently and real time. But who do you teach all of these human-like responses to? Naturally, you teach them to artificial intelligence models, machine learning models, and natural language processing models. So, using artificial intelligence, machine learning, and NLPs to mimic human functions in real time and block cybersecurity attacks from happening is basically called as cognitive cybersecurity. So, how is it? What is the benefits of using cognitive cybersecurity? Behavior analysis. That is, AIs can learn normal behaviors of users and systems and networks over time. We also talked about defining the normal behavior. So you can teach or you can feed in loads of data to your systems, to your machine learning models, so that they come to know that how a normal pattern looks and how an abnormal pattern looks and when to turn on that trigger. Next, there is threat intelligence. Threat intelligence is AI systems analyze vast amounts of data from various sources such as threat feeds, logs, and historical attack patterns in real time so that they can predict the attacks better and reduce the number of false positives. Then there is automated threat hunting. Threat hunting we already talked about, where AI itself assumes that there might be a malware and they scan through every single system to detect and locate and eradicate that particular malware wherever if it is hidden. Next, there is predictive analysis, which is machine learning models can predict future attacks based on the past records. Like during a particular amount of time when there is a lot of traffic on the server, then this particular attack can happen. So AI models and machine learning models can predict that. Then there is real-time responses again, when AI systems can automatically respond to identified threats in real time. So say an attack is happening when you are not in your office and your servers are getting... So by the time you reach in the morning to say check on your servers, all of your systems have been breached. But if you have put instead of ML model there to take care of it, then even when you are not in the office, the AI will take care of securing and keeping your systems and servers safe. So the benefit of using such systems is, say the hacker sends this user email again, which our red team used earlier. So this whole scenario, such as email phishing, can be prevented by cognitive cybersecurity. And not just email phishing. It can prevent fraud detection, it can prevent network security, and much, much more. Moving on to our next question. What is the role of threat intelligence in SOC? We talked about threat intelligence in cognitive cybersecurity. Let's look at what that actually is. So threat intelligence provides actionable insights into the threat landscape, bridging the gap between raw data and decision making by delivering contextualized information about potential adversaries, tactics, and risks. What does this mean? Threat intelligence, say you have a particular log of a lot of hackers. This is CipherVortex, Bitebender, ShadowPulse, and Phantom Cache. You have records of all of these hackers. What threat intelligence does is, they analyze all of this data and then they try to arrive at a conclusion. So say this particular hacker, your CipherVortex, will have a particular hacking style, and then ShadowPulse will have a different hacking style. So depending on the attack pattern that is happening right now, you can trace it back to whichever hacker who had implemented this, and this can open new gates for you. Or in technical terms, without threat intelligence, the SOC would be like a night guard who doesn't know what burglars look like or how they act. So now what is the role of threat intelligence in SOC? It provides a proactive threat detection. That is, it identifies emerging threats and vulnerabilities before they are exploited. So that even when a minute change happens in your server, your systems will know, your network security systems will know that this particular attack has already been happened in the past and this particular hacker did it. And these are the systems which were affected the last time. So naturally, at a very early stage itself, you can stop that attack from ever happening. Next, there is incident triage and response, which enhances the SOC's ability to prioritize, investigate, and respond to security alerts effectively. Next, there is alert prioritization, which reduces the noise of false positive and focuses on the most critical threats. So if there's a normal behavior already existing in the AI's memory, then obviously when it sees another normal behavior, it will not trigger an alarm. And only when the abnormal behavior comes in, it will trigger the alarm, which will largely reduce the number of false positives. Then there is guiding threat hunting, provides the SOC team with focused intelligence to proactively search for undetected threats in the environment. So, moving on to our next question, describe the stages involved in implementing an SOC. Basically, when you're creating an SOC, what are the steps that you need to be mindful about, is this question. So, implementing an SOC or Security Operations Center is like building a safety control room for your organization's digital environment. So, you have to be very careful about it. How do you build it? First, planning and understanding the need. Depending on what kind of data your company has and what kind of protection it needs, you first need to plan. Okay, this is what I need for my SOC. This is the kind of people I need for my SOC. Next, Designing the SOC. So while designing, you need to make sure what kind of network security tools you're going to implement, what kind of firewalls you're going to use. Are you going to use IDS? Are you going to use IPS? Which kind of SIEM tools are you going to use? Which kind of them are both budget friendly and effective for your organization? So you have to design all of that. You have to basically create a blueprint. That is designing the SOC. Next, you have to set up the infrastructure. Once you have the blueprint ready, you said you need 2 firewalls. Okay, now build the 2 firewalls. That is setting up the infrastructure. Next, you have building the team. While setting up the infrastructure, you would realize that you cannot do all of this on your own. And you need SOC people to help you, to give you a hand with it. There are experts in the SOC field that can help you with building your firewalls, setting up your IDP, IPS, and guiding you about which SIEP tools to use, or they themselves can implement in your company. So that's building the team. Next, starting the operations. Once everything is set, you can start with the plan in motion. Lastly, incident response and testing. You need to make sure that you need to actually do the red team, blue team exercise just to make sure that everything that you set is actually working. That is incident response and testing. Testing out that your SOC SIEM is actually beneficial and actually did come out the way you planned it to be. Moving on to the next question, what is a zero-day attack? I said earlier that we'll come back to this. That's a very, very important and a very, very dangerous topic in cybersecurity, zero-day attack. Say you launched a new software. You launched a new software to the market. You ran it through every possible cybersecurity attack there was, and you tested out the system. Everything is set. You launched the software into the market. Unfortunately, a hacker found a particular vulnerability that you did not know existed in the system before. And the hacker sent a bug to this particular vulnerability, and unfortunately it affected every single system that was connected to your software or that downloaded your software. So now the problem is developers have no idea how the hacker was able to breach into the system, or what the particular problem was in your software. The developers don't know. So meaning there are 0 days of security for these poor users who unfortunately downloaded the bug with your software. So that is called as a zero-day attack or a zero-day exploit. Or in technical terms, a zero-day vulnerability is a security flaw in software or hardware that is unknown to the vendor or the developer, that is unknown to even you. So the problem, what makes this so dangerous is that you yourself don't know what the problem is. So then how can you solve without knowing the problem? That is why zero-day attack is so dangerous. Moving on to our last question, what are the differences between a firewall deny rule and a drop rule? Now, what is a firewall deny rule? Say, you are a user, you're the employee, and you're connected to the company's internet. Now you're trying to access some particular website which is blocked by your company's server. So naturally, there's a firewall which blocks this particular server from being accessed by this employee who is connected to the company's internet. And naturally, the firewall lets you know that, okay, you've been blocked, this service unreachable, or some kind of message you will get. So that is called as a firewall deny rule, where a packet is actively rejected and sends a response back to the sender notifying them that their packet has been denied. So in a way, when you were trying to access this website, the firewall blocked it. So it sends you a message as well that you have been blocked, that you cannot access that particular website. But in case of firewall drop rule, say you're again connected to your company's internet, and a particular hacker tries to do the man-in-the-middle attack, where they try to breach the communication between you and the server. Now there's a firewall in the middle. So what the firewall does is, without telling the hacker that you are getting blocked, it just blocks it. Or in technical terms, it silently discards the packet without sending any notification to the sender. So in such a case, the hacker will not know that they are not able to access the website, and they won't even get any message at all, which is another strategy which is used to increase the security of your servers. And with that, we reach the end of this particular video. Thank you so much for watching.